Happy Monday. Thank you for watching this week's Weekly Wisdom. Now, I had the pleasure of doing some work with the Center for Creative Leadership last week. And while I was there, my co-facilitator was the absolutely fabulous and amazing Dr. Janet Lockhart-Jones. Now, while we were there, we were having conversation and learning from each other, and I was just in awe of her brilliance. And she started talking to me about toxic productivity. It is not a term that I had heard before, but as soon as she said it, I knew exactly what it was. And when we think about toxic productivity, it is being productive at all costs. So think about if you feel guilty for sitting around doing nothing. If instead of watching TV, you find yourself always worrying about your to-do list. Instead of being able to just decompress and be quiet for a minute, you start figuring out what is that next thing that you're going to do. You see, toxic productivity can come from a variety of reasons. It can come from imposter syndrome. It can come from childhood conditioning. It can come from all of these things that make us feel like if we are not working, if we are not producing, we don't have any value. We start tying our worth to our ability to produce. And when we think about it, it seems like we're doing all of these amazing things, but we keep pushing ourselves beyond what our body and our brains and our hearts can handle. And so if you think that you have toxic productivity, the first thing to do is recognize that there's going to be a little voice in the back of your head. It could be a super quiet voice, or it could be a really loud voice, but it's that voice that's telling you that you got to do more, you got to push harder, you got to work harder, you got to show up, you got to dot, 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 dot. Just recognizing the voice is the very first step to being able to combat toxic productivity. The next thing that you can do is build in intentional 10 to 15 minute breaks throughout your day. We're not saying every hour, but every 2 or 3 hours, build in 10 to 15 minute breaks where you don't do anything. And understand that when you're doing this, it's going to be super uncomfortable. You're going to be doing it. You're going to be sitting still. You're going to be like Summer, and you're going to be cussing me and doing all the things. And it's okay. I can take it. I can take it. But what I want you to do is just sit there. Read a book, not a business book, not a self-help book, just a book. Read a comic book. Read a romance novel. Read a fantasy. If you need a fantasy book, you let me know. I will tell you all the fantasy books. But do nothing or something that is not considered productive. That is not a part of your checklist. The next thing that you can do to combat toxic productivity is building in moments to breathe. When you start feeling that overwhelm, that rush, that desire to do something, stop and breathe. One of my favorite techniques is called square breathing. And it's just imagine that you're drawing a square in your mind. You breathe in, counting to 5, hold, counting to 5, breathe out, counting to 5, hold, counting to 5. That's how you make the square. Do that. Do that 4, 5, 6 times as long as you can comfortably. And then the next time you do it, try and do it a little bit longer. When you start feeling this anxiety coming up, try some square breathing. It can help. And understand that your worth is not tied to your productivity. You have value without having to be productive at every minute of every day. Now, thank you for joining me for this week's Weekly Wisdom. I hope that this topic resonated with you because I know the day that I discovered that I had tied my self-worth into my productivity and that the little voice was telling me that if I wasn't the hardest working person in the room, I didn't deserve to be in the room. It was life-changing. It was completely and totally life-changing. It took time and it was uncomfortable. And there are still moments where I'm thinking I need to do more. But now I can recognize it for what it is. And a huge thank you to Dr. Janet Lockhart-Jones for sharing with me toxic productivity, what it means, and how it's impacting us all throughout society. Have an absolutely amazing week. And don't forget, whether you're being productive or taking some time for you, you got this. I can't wait to see you next week.